Ladies and gents, welcome to the stream, and we've got an absolute economic bloodbath on the way, is the only way I can really describe this, between the US and EU. Now, we've talked before about some of the things that have been going on behind the scenes with the EU, and I talked about Ursula von der Leyen. I said she's one of the most sly leaders I think I've ever come across, her and Lagarde, in the way that they do a lot of their dealings. And it's quite interesting because it was only last week, I believe, that after all of the sort of pressure that they were trying to put on the Trump admin to back off with the tariffs, what actually took place was that they were doing all of these other deals behind the scenes. Again, nothing against that. They're doing the best for the European Union, and if you're in the EU, you'll probably say, well, that's good. I'm glad she's a sly fox, Neil. But then on the other side, I think what's actually happened here, and what I said would likely happen last week, I said as soon as President Trump sees what they've been doing behind the scenes in this new alliance, and also signing deals with China and some of the BRICs nations, I said as soon as that hits his desk, he is going to absolutely flip. Well, let's get into some of the shared screen today. Then let's take a look at what has happened. Here we go. So Trump has now threatened this extra 10% tariff on nations siding with BRICs. I wonder why. I wonder where this has come from. Well, it's obvious that the report has now hit his desk. So let's take a look at this. He's now warned that countries which side with the policies of the BRICS alliance that go against US interests will be hit with an extra 10% tariff. This is what he put out on social media then. Any countries aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICs will be charged an additional 10% tariff. There will be no exceptions to this policy. Well, is BRICS, the first thing we need to distinguish here, is BRICS an anti-American organization? And I would say actually no. I would say, and we'll get into the flip side of that, because they do a lot of anti-American things, but it's really how you distinguish that. So why I don't think they're anti-American? I think what they're actually doing is they're anti-West as opposed to anti-American, because you look at the policies of BRICS, and it is to grow their alliance. It's not just Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa anymore. You've got a lot more nations. I'll touch upon those later. And they want to grow that. They want to grow the emerging nations, the emerging markets, the EMs as well. So it's not exactly anti-American, it's anti-Western, because they want to create this new world order, which they often talk about. But that's not anything new. The EU, Ursula and Lagarde are always talking about the new world order that they want to create, which is an EU-driven and led world order. And in fact, you look at what they just did last week with the digital euro, which hasn't launched yet, but I still stand that it will launch in the next year. You look at what they did, they started putting all of these trade deals in place using the digital euro. And there's a lot of stipulations in there about the US dollar. And that's a key point. So really what we're seeing is we're seeing this move away from the US dollar. If you missed Friday's video, and that was most people, I put a lot of effort and research into Friday's video, but for whatever reason, it only got about 60,000 views. It's a very poor performing video. I recommend you go back and watch that, because it does go into a lot of details. Now, if you're American, you watch that video, you might not have liked it, but ladies and gentlemen, my friends, I'm just giving you the data and the facts. It's not an anti-American video or anything like that. I'm just showing you the jobs data was manipulated. I'm showing you the US dollar is losing a huge amount of ground at the moment. And I'll explain a couple of new developments on that in this video as well. So again, I'm just sharing this with you so that you can be aware of what's taking place. So what else then? Any country aligning themselves. Okay, we just covered that. The US has now set a 9th of July deadline. So basically 2 days to get this trade deal agreed. And this will begin on the 1st of August. So there's not much time at all. And so far, the US has only struck trade agreements with the UK, Vietnam, and, well, a partial deal with China. I'm sure someone said there were 22 trade deals struck. So I don't know why the media is saying there's only 3. It's quite bizarre, actually. Although Britain and America have still not reached a deal over taxes for UK steel imported by the US. So we're still waiting on this one. But the EU is reportedly in talks to keep a provisional 10% tax in place for most goods shipped to the US beyond the deadline. It's also in discussions about reducing a 25% tariff on EU cars and parts, and a 50% tax on steel and aluminium, or aluminum for the US people, to the US. Last week, Trump said Japan could face a 30% or 35% tariff if it failed to reach a deal by Wednesday. Now, that's actually taken place. We've got to talk about that in a moment, because we've just had a big one with Japan and Korea. This has just broke about 10 minutes before I turned on the live stream here. So there's now a 25% tariff on Japan and Korea. Now, I've got to tell you why this is so bad for South Korea in a moment. But one thing I need to share as well, remember the gold and silver course we've been talking about? I know a lot of you have taken this now. The course is now complete. As of about 20 minutes ago, I just posted the last bonus PDF. So everything is now ready. It's all in there. The conclusion, everything's done. Gosh, look how many videos there are. This is how many videos. This is the normal investing course as well. This is your normal gold and silver investing course. This isn't even the advanced course. So the advanced course releases this Saturday. We start releasing that. So just a reminder what that means. If you haven't done the gold and silver course yet, that offer that you've got is about to expire. So this is your last. Well, do you know what? I'll leave it open for a couple of days, but you've basically got almost no time left if you want this on offer. This is the gold and silver investing bundle. If you want to get into this program, now is pretty much your last chance to do it. Or you can take the full bundle of both programs. And there's all sorts. I mean, look, this is just one. If you get in now as well, you'll get this bonus. This is just one bonus. Look at the size of this. If I scan, I'll have to go fast. Look at this. This is just one of the PDFs that talks about everything from, preparation, and it tells you how to move when the markets move, crisis preparedness. It gives you breakdowns. It gives you all sorts of things. So just a final note on that. This is your last opportunity. Now, if we continue on with this then, last year, the list of BRICs members... Oh, by the way, the link is below in the description. I should probably add that, or the pinned comment. So the BRICs members expanded last year. That was... they expanded to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. So they now account for more than half of the world's population. In 2024, we remember President Trump threatened 100% tariffs on BRICS countries if they moved ahead with their own currency to rival with the US dollar. Well, that is, I believe, going ahead. We do have a BRICS currency, I believe, in the works. I can't exactly prove it right now because it hasn't been officially announced, but they are doing all sorts of things there with that. What trade deals has the US agreed then? As of the 7th of July, this was with the UK to cut tariffs on UK cars and parts from 27.5% down to 10%, up to a quota of 100,000 vehicles. Taxes on aerospace goods have been cut to 0, and in return, the UK has agreed to remove import taxes on US ethanol and beef. We also had a deal with Vietnam. This was a big one just it was about a week ago, I think this one came in. So now they've got a deal with Vietnam. And then there's a partial deal with China. I don't know how much this is going to hold, but there is a partial deal. Now, let me tell you about South Korea. and then we'll jump into some other things. We've got the euro and everything else. South Korea Parliament has just approved 31.8 trillion won extra budget to bolster the economy. Now you might say, well, what does that mean, Neil? Why should I be aware of that? Well, this is because they have really got some issues going on in South Korea's economy. And they are blaming it on President Trump. I mean, every single... let me come back to the main screen. Every single economy now and country that has a problem with their economy, even though some of these things have been going on for years, they are all blaming the United States. I mean, it's a bit like when all the energy situation happened 3 years ago, and every country who did the sanctions on Russia, their energy prices went up. They then couldn't afford a lot of stuff. The manufacturing prices went up. Everything, this massive inflation ran through the economy. And rather than say, oh, it's because we did these inflicted sanctions, they all went, it was Putin. Putin is responsible for our economy collapsing and all of this inflation and everything. And everyone's like, Putin, he's the one, it was the perfect scapegoat in order to sort of defend the fact that the politicians and the central bankers had made all these blunders with the energy prices. And now we've still got it today, sky-high energy costs throughout Europe as a result of all of this. And now they just don't even know what the solution is. More solar panels, I think, is their latest one. Let's keep going with this. Let's keep going. So this is the issue with South Korea at the moment. The economy unexpectedly contracted in the first quarter against the backdrop of US... Oh, here we go. President Trump's sweeping tariffs. So they've expanded a mere 0.8% this year. They look at the debt to... the debt to GDP is now 49%. And this is not going to end well, I can tell you that. They've got an unprecedented wave of business closures as well at the moment. 1.8 million small business owners. One of them said, am I the only one whose business is falling apart? And a lot jumped in and said, no, mine is as well. This man said, my business is so dead, I can't even think straight. I opened my chicken shop at 4 p.m. and only made $87 by 8 p.m. What is walnut pastry? Can anyone drop in the chat? What is walnut pastry, by the way? He said his walnut pastry businesses are closing down. I have no idea what that is. It sounds kind of tasty, but I'd be interested to know. Just over 1 million businesses, both individual and corporate, filed for closure last year, up by nearly 22% from the previous year. It was the first time the number surpassed 1 million since they began, it's probably before that then. So since they began keeping stats in 1995, that is the low point. Now, AP have put this report out today, and it's very biased, and it's all about the tariff. So I did my own little report because as soon as I saw what they were writing, I had to verify this, and it wasn't true. So AP made a lot of lies in their report, and they said that the US is going to suffer more than the EU if they don't make a trade deal. Well, I ran all the numbers, and it's just not accurate. So here's what you need to know. Basically, both sides would suffer quite badly. That's first thing. But the EU is more export dependent than the US. The US has a 70% driven GDP by consumer spending. The EU doesn't. They focus a lot on their exports. Especially if you think of Germany, the Netherlands, and Ireland, they are pretty much very heavily weighted on exports. And the US is their largest market. The US has a more balanced economy for a start. It's more domestic. They haven't got to worry as much. That's why you hear Trump and some of the others saying that they're not concerned because, the economy would take a hit, but they know the EU economy would take a much bigger hit. What else are we? Okay, trade flows as well. The EU runs a surplus with the US. It's about $200 billion a year, which the EU says is not a fair reflection. And I remember when the US admin asked for that report, and they said, well, why is it not a fair reflection? Give us the reasons. And I remember reading that report, and it was all about emotion, feelings, this country here is a small country in Europe, whereas this country is a big country in Europe. It was like a bit like Kamala Harris, where Ukraine is this country here. Russia is a bit like that. You're reading it going, what are they talking about? Does anyone know what they're talking about? So they said, yeah, they've got this 200 billion surplus, but don't read into it too much. Okay, sure. So what would the biggest, if you have any exposure to this in your accounts, by the way, or your investments, for the EU, it would be automotive. So watch that very closely. Luxury goods, I guess that's more of your sort of Louis Vuitton group there. So they own a lot, but that, luxury brands type things. And then it would be machinery. But I know that some of the luxury brands were they said that they would move their manufacturing production back to the US if the tariffs started hitting. So it would move fairly quickly. I just think that the US has the power play here over the EU because it's one government, the US government. They can move very quickly. The EU can't. There's 27 member states. It's going to be very, very tricky. But the US would suffer as well. Agriculture, that's your soybeans, corn, beef, aerospace, and tech. These would suffer as well, but it's really not a fair comparison. All of these biased media outlets are saying that the US would suffer the most. It's just not true at all. And I have no bias in this. I'm just telling you the facts from my research. What else we got then? So they're about to find out on Monday what's going to happen. Here we go. So US Treasury Secretary told CNN's State of the Union program on Sunday the EU was very slow in coming to the table, but that talks were now making very good progress. Yeah, and we talked about this, why they're so slow. And I was sharing things that some of you actually left comments saying, I had no idea of any of this stuff. It's because the EU was trying to do deals sort of behind the scenes. They were lobbying as well. They were trying to get the WTO involved. They were doing human rights allegations. They were doing every case they possibly could. And then they put this trade deal together with the UK, Canada. They've got a trade deal going on with BRICs behind the scenes. No one seems to know about this one. They're trying to put this deal together. They are really, and I think it's going to become quite fragmented. I think you're going to see a US-led sort of economy trade group. You're going to see a BRICS trade group, and then you're going to see this small EU trade group. And I think they are playing the wrong hand at the moment. But let's see how they get on. We don't need to see all the bias that they've did. And then China's just reacted to Trump's 10%. Here we go. China said BRICS does not seek confrontation and does not target any country after President Trump threatened the new 10% tariff. They said we are a platform for cooperation among emerging markets in developing countries. Yeah, I did say at the start I wanted to just mention that. I agree with that, but at the same time, you've got to think that some of these people or countries are like chess masters. They're not playing this short-term game. They are way ahead thinking. And I know for a fact that they are deliberately doing things against the US dollar. You can see it because I follow the Treasury data and who's dumping treasuries, who's acquiring more gold, who's doing all these digital currency plans. It's clear as day to me, but maybe I'm the only one that can see it. Hopefully many of you can see it as well. But it's clear as day. It's obvious they are accumulating gold. A lot of the central banks are accumulating gold right now. I think we're at record levels. As of recording this video, we're at record levels. Now, why don't you drop in the comments, why do you think that is? Why is it that the governments are acquiring all of this gold right now as assets? And Basel has changed, there's Basel IV and everything coming in now. They're starting to change the rules around gold and silver. Well, gold, I'll put silver to the side. But they're changing the rules around gold. And that's why I say to you, if they're holding all of this gold, maybe you should hold a little bit of precious metals yourself. I don't know. Even if it's just a small allocation. In the advanced course as well, I'm going to teach you how to turn a small amount of, well, you can do as much as you want, but of your pension, your 401k, your IRA, your SIP, whatever you've got. 5 to 10% for many of you, I think, will be sensible, but for others, you might want to do more. I'm going to show you all that in the advanced course as well. So there's a lot going on, ladies and gents, with the monetary system right now. Just pay attention to it, I would say. I know a lot of you hold gold and silver anyway, but it is a very smart play. So what else then? It advocates openness, inclusiveness, and willing cooperation. It is not a block for confrontation, nor does it target any country, they say. On the US tariff hikes then, China's made its position clear more than once. Trade wars and tariff wars have no winners, and protectionism leads nowhere. Well, we'll have to see about that. BRICS is formed of 11 countries now then, so these are your 11. And they just had their 17th summit in Brazil over the weekend. Putin didn't turn up because there's an international arrest warrant for him. Xi also wasn't present, which was interesting. I'm not exactly sure why he didn't turn up. There's obviously something going on. But Putin did make a sort of speech. He said that globalization is obsolete and the future belongs to emerging markets. What else? Okay, and he wants them to enhance the use of their national currencies for trade instead of using the US dollar. So again, they say they're not sort of attacking any countries or whatever, but really inadvertently they are, because if you are saying you want more trade in local currencies and to build up the gold reserves, and you're doing a digital currency on the side and a sort of BRICs currency, and you are dumping US treasuries and moving away from the US dollar, that is inadvertently, doesn't matter how you look at it, it is an attack on the US dollar. Why are they not sort of doing that to the euro? That's the question you've got to ask. Why are they not dumping the euro really heavily like they are the dollar? Why are they not taking measures against the euro? So I don't necessarily agree that they are not attacking the dollar and things like that. I think they kind of are inadvertently. But let me know what you think below. This now is 45% of the world's population, their group. When it's growing, it's going to grow again. Everything indicates the model of liberal globalization is coming obsolete, he says. The center of business activity is shifting towards the emerging markets. Yes and no, I don't 100% agree with that. I definitely think emerging markets are growing, but I don't think that they are becoming the center of business activity. Putin also called on the BRICS countries to step up cooperation, logistics, trade, and finance. The 5 core BRICS members account for more than 28 trillion in GDP in dollar terms, while the group of 7 accounts for more than 51 trillion. So there's still, half of what the group of 7 are. So they're not a huge threat at this stage, but it is growing. And then Bloomberg's just put out this story. This is about the dollar doubters ceding historic gains for developing world debt. So this has just been happening at the moment. Something I talked about on Friday's video, but the US dollar has tumbled 11% this year. It's 10.8% to be specific. This is the worst performance since the 1970s. It's pretty serious. It fell against 19 of the 23 most traded emerging markets, 10%, at least 10% against 10 of them. So this is concerning, ladies and gents. It really is. So what does that mean then? It means that the returns of the emerging markets actually went up 12% just in the first half of the year. So if you were holding some of this, you probably did quite well. The money is flowing in unprecedented amounts. EM debt funds attracted more than $21 billion this year. That's from Bank of America. And these funds drew inflows for each of the past 11 weeks and $3.1 billion just in the last week. This is huge where the money is flowing at the moment. The dollar is near multi-year lows at the moment. And this was a big one that just came out as well. US bondholders have just sold off $10 billion plus in treasuries and corporate debt. This has just come out in the last couple of days here. This is huge as well. People are selling, or more specifically investors. Nearly 11 billion has been dumped just in the last 3 weeks. So you can see what's going on here. There's a lot of sort of concern, and I think a lot of it is over this big, beautiful bill, as President Trump calls it. I'm not 100% behind this big bill, as I've mentioned to you. Yes, I like it for the fact that it's going to create all this new, it's going to stimulate the economy. That's what it will do. It will help with growth. It will produce a lot of good things for the country. So that part I'm behind. But the part I'm not behind is that it's being created with more debt. So this is going to increase the national debt massively. I mean, I honestly, at this point now, I think if President Trump is not, and his team are not going to tackle the debt, then no president is going to after this. And you can, I know sometimes I make strong statements, but, screen record this, whatever you want to do, but remember it, because I think this is now the nail in the coffin. I don't mean that the US dollar is going to collapse or anything like that, but I just don't see a way back from this debt level. And because it is a fiat currency since it was taken off the gold standard by President Nixon in 1971, August 1971, there's nothing back in it. So it is fiat in nature, fiat let it be so, the Latin. So there's no way for this now to be resolved other than a debt default in the future, where they'll reset the currency, they'll put it on a digital currency, or they'll create a new currency, they'll back it by their reserves, gold, cryptos, and whatever else they're going to have in reserve. But that's what's going to happen. You're not going to pay off this debt now. And I think that's why a lot of these other countries are selling off the treasuries, are starting to accumulate gold, because they know that the fiat currencies of the Western world are in a debt spiral. The debt to GDP ratio is too high. They're not going to be able to pay it off. And I think the writing is on the wall, and that's why people are rushing to gold and silver, genuinely. So with that said, I'll just end on this note. If you do want to get, this is your last opportunity for the discount on the gold and silver program, highly recommend it. It's going to teach you how to actually buy gold and silver, and it is very specific based on each individual's needs. It's not just a one-size-fits-all program. It's going to show you based on what you want to do across all the variables, whether it's home storage, whether you want to vault it, whether you want to allocate it, whether you want unallocated, whether you want to trade it, whether you want to put it in a pension, ETFs, whatever you want to do and how much you've got. It's all covered in there. So with that said, thank you for being a subscriber here. I really appreciate you. Links are in the description below or the pinned comment. God bless you. God bless your family. And I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.